Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mabel, and I appreciate you tuning in to this weekly podcast variety show about all things bike. Fat tires, skinny tires, racing, touring, the equipment and events, the places to ride, and of course, the people who make it happen. Every episode available on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts. And now, some of the more popular past episodes and all new episodes are available to stream on the Bike Talk with Dave channel on YouTube. How fun is that? Now, how about this week's show with Busch? I've been riding and racing for a long time, more than 40 years. And one thing that's been abundantly clear is that cycling is astoundingly white. I did some digging for actual stats, and everything I found confirms what I can see with my own eyes. More than 80% of competitive cyclists are white, and I'm sure that recreational cycling is right up there too. And the 16 or 17% that are not white are mostly split between Black, Hispanic, and Asian. And as you likely know, I live in Des Moines, in Iowa, in the Midwest. Not a ton of cultural diversity here, but definitely not a ton of diversity in the peloton. However, there has been one dude showing up on group rides for a couple of years now, and is starting to make his mark sprinting for the finish line at local races. I've gotten to know him a bit better this year, most notably when he came chasing from behind after I'd been dropped on a group ride, and together we worked hard to close the gap to the group, finally catching them before the last fast stretch of our ride. Of course, he stuck it and he stayed with the group, and me and my 58 years got dropped pretty quickly after making the effort to close the gap. Regardless, it was a great connection with what I have found to be a super nice guy. And at a post-morning ride breakfast a week or so later, I asked if he'd come on the pod to talk about the environment and challenges of being Black and making your way deep into the peloton. We also discuss how we can make cycling a more welcoming and diverse sport. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my new friend, Busch. Busch, welcome to Bike Talk with Dave. This is actually Bike Talk with Dave. Our last episode was Book Talk with Shelby.
Okay.
So we're doing Bike Talk with Dave and Jay.
Sweet.
It's awesome. Thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, I don't know, background. I think last year, did we start riding together? We joined in group rides last year.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, last year rode a bit with you. I didn't even know your name. I didn't know your name until this year. That's how bike racing is, though. You're in the group, and it's
right.
Like, John was there. Who's John?
Yeah.
Well, he's on the orange trek.
You're right,
and he wears the, red helmet. Or, that guy, yeah. I've ridden with him for 5 years. I didn't know his name. How many people are like that, which is super funny. But anyway, I really got to know you, I don't know, a month ago. Got dropped on the REI ride going up the hill, and you came from behind and towed me all the way back to the group. And
true camaraderie.
Yeah, it was true camaraderie, yeah. I mean, I think I came through twice.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 times. Yeah. I pulled a little bit. I gave you a break here and there.
Yeah.
But you did have to slow down and let me by, I know. Anyway, you're super strong, super fast. And I got to say, and one of the reasons you're here is because you're also super Black.
Yes,
you're a Black dude, and
yes.
living in, I don't know, I feel like cycling is about as whitewashed as you get.
As a former runner, it's probably on par with endurance running.
You think?
It's comparable, I guess. There are a lot of Kenyans. I think
for
that's
sure.
the difference.
I mean, definitely the front of endurance running is Black.
Right.
But I don't know about the other 99%.
But in the Midwest, I went to high school in the Midwest, and most of the elite endurance athletes, male or female, in the Midwest are certainly not overwhelmingly black, I would say.
True that. I literally just opened Outside Magazine today, and when we were on a rain delay for our ride this morning. It's an article reprinted from 2018, an essay by Latria Graham, who has, I think, become a regular contributor for Outside Magazine, but they dug this up from 5 years ago. And I don't know, I thought of you when I read this, because like I said, I literally read this morning, but it says, when I type "black people don't" into Google, statements like "black people don't like to work" and "black people don't like to travel" show up. When I add "camp," I get a Guardian article called "Why Don't Black People Camp?" And blackamericaweb.com, a news site for African Americans, features a list of 22 things black folks don't do. Number 2 is go camping or hiking. Number 7 is go to national parks. Later comes swim. And a little further down the list is eat tofu. To be honest, I dug up that article and it doesn't really exist. I couldn't find it on my phone, but I feel like cycling, especially bike racing, might be on that list.
It potentially. Yeah, for sure.
But you're definitely one of the only black dudes that ride with us on a regular basis in Des Moines.
Yeah.
And you're a great dude. Like, great smile, super fun, love having you show up. It's always a treat when you show up. And I want to talk about what led you into cycling. But first, what led you to Des Moines? Where are you from, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. Born and raised.
Cubs or Sox? Or do you care?
I'm not a baseball fan, but
no?
My dad is a huge Sox fan, and as a Southsider, I guess that's where my allegiance is supposed to lie. So I guess I'll go with the White Sox, although if either team wins, I guess I'm pretty excited. I don't think I've watched a baseball game since Sammy Sosa played.
Oh, wow.
Moises Alou. It's been a long time.
That's a couple weeks ago.
So, grew up in Chicago. My parents actually, mom and dad actually, both from Chicago. My dad moved to Iowa on a baseball scholarship at Loras College.
Oh, cool.
So
I find it ironic that you're not a baseball fan.
Yeah, I know. I think it still pains my dad to this day that I could care less about baseball. I honestly don't think I've ever watched a full game, even as a kid.
They are long games. You could be riding for 3 hours.
Yeah, it's just not my speed. But my dad had a baseball scholarship, which took him from Chicago, where he was born as well as my mother, to Iowa, to Dubuque, Iowa, right on the nose there. And he never left. He moved to Dubuque sometime in the 90s, I would imagine, and still lives there today. So I was raised largely by my mom in Chicago. I stayed in Chicago, but obviously I would visit my dad in the summers and a lot throughout the year. And when I was starting high school, so about 14 years old, my parents thought it would be best for me to move to Iowa to start my young adult life, certainly young academic life in Iowa.
Huh.
So
how'd you feel about that?
Not good at all.
No.
It was pretty bad. It was quite the shock to move.
I mean, junior high is pretty formative years.
Right,
Did you have a group of friends and settled there?
Yeah, best friends, extremely settled. So it was obviously quite obviously a cultural shock. But yeah, from a developmental standpoint, I had lifelong friends that I left behind really, because of a decision my parents came to, which, 14-year-old me, difficult to think through the many scenarios in that and the whys and those sorts of things. But nonetheless, that's, kind of what brought me to Iowa.
And those are the cards you're dealt, so you're going to play the hand, right?
Those are the cards you're dealt. So, yeah, moved to Iowa when I was 14. And I guess just like my dad, I've never left. I've been here ever since. So
I don't mind that they brought you here because, like I said, it's a treat to have you show up on the group rides.
Yeah.
So you went to high school in Dubuque.
Yeah.
Did you do what do they call it? Secondary college? Did you go to college?
College, yeah. So moved to Dubuque at 14. Obviously struggled very much my freshman year. But maybe very much like the story of my life, I ended up making a lot of friends. I married my homecoming date as the homecoming king.
Stop
my
it.
High school, so I kind of went from a bit of an outsider to somebody that got the pleasure of meeting a lot of good people in Dubuque, really ingratiating myself as an Iowan, which I now proudly claim.
Wow.
But so 4 years in Dubuque, went to the University of Northern Iowa initially on a track scholarship, or as a walk-on, I'm sorry, as a middle distance athlete.
So 8,
400, and the long jump were what I was semi-talented enough to be a state or competitor, here at Drake in state, which is the only time I had ever been to Des Moines prior to moving here. But went to UNI initially, very young, 17. Really just as an athlete, not too much focus on academics. I was a pretty middling student. Never really found my I think academic identity, as my wife refers to it as. But,
I can kind of relate to that, actually. Yeah. I went to UNI as well. Now, what UNI gave me was a beautiful bride.
Yeah.
And I'll always take that. But yeah, academically, I'm not really doing what I studied. Studied? I don't know.
Yeah. I was actually a broadcast major at UNI.
Really?
For a little bit.
You should be doing this podcast. What am I doing? I was a recreation major, which maybe we could say this has something to do with recreation. But
that's funny.
This is a great combination for both of our majors. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I had a radio station and everything.
Wow, dude, that's awesome.
For a little bit at UNI, they were in the student union in the basement. I think my mom and grandmother were the only calls I ever fielded. But yeah, a pretty short tenure at UNI, about a year and a half, 2 years. And ultimately ended up moving back home to Dubuque. Trying to find my way. Actually left school for 2 years, I think, about 2.5 years maybe. Really just trying to, find a future. So in the interim, I worked at Hormel Foods.
Oh, wow.
So I worked in manufacturing for, about 2.5 years, driving forklift, doing some, we'll call it quality control type roles.
You weren't on the meat packing line or anything?
No.
That's hard work, man.
No, I actually, maybe interesting or not interestingly enough, I used to make 1,000-pound batches of Hormel Completes was my role.
Wow.
So I know what's unfortunately in a Hormel spaghetti bowl still haunts me.
I'm not going to ask.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask.
Yeah,
Well, this podcast is not sponsored by Hormel.
Oh, yeah, by the good folks at Hormel.
And may never be.
So
Never mind.
2.5 years of driving in and out of a meat freezer and really trying to find my way.
Did you continue running?
No. Very much lost touch with. Although I mentioned earlier, I met my wife now in high school as my homecoming date. We were not seeing each other at this time. I had lost kind of really touch with much of my athletic aspirations. I was just trying to find my way as at this time, a 19-year-old kid. And so moved back home and was just working full time. And yeah, ultimately, as we kind of get into it, after a while and a lot of contemplation, and, by the grace of rekindling the love, reconnecting with my wife, who at the time was starting her master's. Ultimately, as she always has done, just kind of inspired me to finish my college path that I had started on as a first generation graduate in my family. So
cool.
So yeah, I got back with my wife and quit my job, sold my fancy car that I'd saved my Hormel money with, and sold everything I had and went back to school.
Wow.
And ultimately went back to school based on a survey. My wife graduated undergrad from Iowa State University and worked in the Academic Career Center. Gave me a...
That's a good fit for somebody who's trying to figure out what they want to do, isn't it?
Gave me a career assessment of sorts. And that assessment said that at the end of it that I should pursue a career in technology. So, as foolish as it may be, I let a survey dictate me, picking my major at the University of Dubuque, where I ultimately graduated, and that's what brought me to Des Moines in 2014.
Huh,
so,
wow. So what
story.
was it? That is long, but it's not long. It's your whole life, man. What was the degree in?
Computer information systems. I minored in business, but was hired by a consulting company here in Des Moines to start my career in technology consulting.
Was that a better move than broadcasting? Says the guy who makes $25 every 5 months with his podcast.
Yes. I had some friends, actually. My college roommate, graduated with a degree in, I think, electronic media is the name of the major at UNI, the same major that I had started out in. And ultimately, he moved on to... I think maybe more lucrative.
Yeah, I hear you. Journalism's hard. Journalism is super hard.
For sure.
Yep. Well, that's kind of cool. So you were a runner for a bit in college, obviously in high school, state qualifier.
Yeah.
Ran at the Drake. Do you run at Drake Relays or just state track meet?
No, I think I ran at both.
Oh, nice.
I'm getting old, my memories.
That's not atypical for sure. I mean, if you qualify for Drake, you usually qualify for state.
Yeah,
and if you're good enough to
both.
go to state, you're typically good enough to make the Drake cutoff. But
I think I did both.
that doesn't surprise you. So you're a good runner, ran at UNI a bit. How'd you find that again? Or was it running that you got back involved with on the athletic side?
Running brought me back.
It was running.
Yeah, running's always brought me back. And my wife has... she's never been, like, the most talented runner, but her consistency and discipline has been, like, the most common trait in her athletic career, I guess. My wife didn't run in college. She pursued an opportunity at Division III. She ultimately did not take advantage of that. But she went to Iowa State, as I mentioned, but wasn't good enough to run Division I necessarily, but kept running. I mean, marathons. I don't know how many marathons my wife has run at this point. Definitely double digits. Maybe like 30, 40 halves or something crazy. So she's always subconsciously, I think, motivated me to always find my like athletic identity, which is truly like my best self. So although I had fallen out of love for a bit with running and really athletics altogether, again, kind of getting back with my now wife inspired me to get back in running, and then now fast forward into cycling.
How deep did you take running? Like, did you follow the marathon, half marathon route, or were you like 5K, 10K guy?
No, I mean, always 5K and less. I'm more of a track athlete, or was more of a track athlete. I actually had a coach, a cross-country coach, who unfortunately passed. Jim Bowden was definitely a role model of mine in Dubuque. But this guy begged me to go out for cross-country for, I think, like 3 years. And I wanted to play football with my friends because, play football in Chicago. It's just what you do. You play football. And he told me routinely, "You're too small. You should go out for cross country." And I was kind of good at, I was okay at track, and I finally quit football my junior year and gave in to Coach Bowden, and I went out for cross country, and kind of the rest is history. I ended up making state and really being a pretty decent middle distance athlete because of Coach Bowden. So yeah, I've always been more of a 5K top end. Yeah. 400, 800 is my favorite race. I ran the 400 hurdles. I love that more than the marathon and half. That was always my wife. Long distance bored me.
I guess that makes sense what you're doing on a bike, but I'm finding it interesting how much we have in common. You and I, my wife, like discipline and consistency define her, and I went out for football, but it only took me one day to figure out that I needed to go run cross country. Went out for football one day. I had no idea what they were talking about, and going into the locker room, my friend's like, "I heard the cross country team's looking for people." I'm like, "We're in."
Yeah.
Took me one day, not 3 years, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as I'm sure we may kind of get into, I think, obviously, like cycling, right? Like cross is a super white sport. I definitely think Coach Bowden, obviously inspired me to get into the sport, which I still love today. I've run, I don't know how many marathons and halves at this point because of my wife, but I think it would have helped nudge me into that identity a lot sooner, and thus making me a better athlete. Potentially, if there were kind of other athletes that look like me in my area, there was, I genuinely don't recall anybody black, African, anything in the area running cross country
in Northeast Iowa,
in 2000,
or anywhere Iowa,
in 2005 or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the questions I have, kind of once we get into cycling, but I'm going to ask that now. Like, as you got into cycling, like, are there any black dudes you look up to? Do you have any role models that look like you?
Yeah. I mean, cycling is. So I guess I should say, like, I've been cycling for almost. Since I moved to Des Moines, 2014, I actually organized a community event, I guess, or a fundraiser for my previous firm, the Tour de Cure, which was a diabetes related event that I organized and had been riding with some of the older gentlemen, partners in my last firm. So I've been riding in the area for about 10 years, and I didn't really, maybe 8 years, but I never really knew that sort of amateur people rode as much. I don't know. I don't know much about the sport. Mm-hmm. Maybe like a lot of other potentially black people, I guess. I kind of got into it, me, myself, personally, from like the California scene, the Corey Williams of the world, the Justin Williams of the world.
I wondered if they were role models, if you looked up to them, if you knew about them. Because obviously they don't race here. I haven't seen them in Des Moines ever. No. They're not leading group rides here. So
no.
You'd have to search to find those guys when you live in Iowa, when you live in Des Moines,
Right.
But if you're in the sport, then, Nation's number one beast, I think, is his Instagram handle.
Right.
If you're in the sport, you're gonna land on him. But I wondered if that was a influence for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt, obviously, like I'm a millennial, like a lot of others, influenced by social media. And obviously for a sport that, historically, at least in my life, has not really been kind of close to me. Like cycling is not a huge community in Dubuque, at least when I grew up there. Certainly not on the south side of Chicago. I don't remember growing up by bike trails. And so slowly getting more into cycling, I found, folks who look like me, not just Corey and Justin, but a bunch of other folks on the coast, both, very serious cyclists like those guys, or at least, domestically, and then like amateur people that really just inspired me to, push forward in my own skin, obviously, even though it is a bit, it's a pretty white spot.
Well, I'm trying to imagine, and knowing that you did things like Tour de Cure and helped put that together, like you're kind of immersing yourself in the cycling world. Des Moines is I don't know if there's a competitive side to the cycling in Des Moines, but there's a huge recreational side.
Right.
We've got great trails. There's like everybody freaking trains for Ragbri. Mm-hmm. The bar-to-bar scene is huge. The bagger scene is huge. And it sounds like you were kind of in that world. And like, how did you cross over into getting a race bike and
more
showing up on the 515 ride or the REI ride? Like, what made you want to cross over into the competitive side?
Yeah, probably as I rode my bike a bit more. First, I guess, even socially, I've been riding Des Moines for a while, but even some of my former social bike group friends can tell you that I was probably always the guy that was like off the front, even with a couple beers. Like, I'd like to go fast. And, even as an athlete, maybe that didn't quite, get to live up to many of the aspirations I had, certainly in my running career. It doesn't take much for me to kind of get that itch again. I enjoy, digging deep and seeing what the kind of the best version of me is athletically. So when I discovered the more competitive side of cycling in Des Moines, which really honestly happened last year, I was kind of hooked. And then this year, even more so, and joining a team, really hooked. And maybe it's just me trying to kind of, reclaim some things that, never was in my previous life. But I just enjoy, I'm a competitor at heart, I think. And I enjoy learning, even though it is brutally, like, it's very painful. To learn, and
I've been racing. I don't know how many. That's almost 40 years, man. 1985, I did my first race in the fall. I think I did some kind of like mountain cross race, maybe in '84. So almost 40 years. That's crazy. And it's still painful. To learn, still painful to ride, still painful to try and hang with the kids, I guess. Try and hang with my wife. Holy moly. She beat me fair and square on Saturday, by the way. We started together in the same field, it was straight up, like, first one across the line is the winner of the Mabel household.
Yeah.
Here's my question to her. This is total sidebar. So, did you have to wait long at the finish line? She's like, well, I did ask if, like, you were still out there or if you had, like, quit on the last lap. I was like, all right. She waited for me for a while. Anyway, yes, it can still be painful. As long as you're trying, like, if you're trying to learn and push your envelope, then it should be painful, right?
Yeah. I don't know who got me into the bike groups. That really helped elevate, make that transition from like social rider to more competitive.
Well, that is a big deal, especially on the road. Like riding in a group is necessity.
Right.
Do you remember your first group ride, like in that crowd, like one of the competitive?
Yes.
You do?
Not more competitive, but my first group rides were pre-pandemic, and it was the Monday night no drop ride.
Oh, cool.
That meets in the Waterworks Pavilion.
Yep.
And met some really nice people. Again, at the time, I kind of thought that was, sort of the scene, right? Like I didn't know it got more competitive than that. But Monday night is where I started.
Was it? I know if I walk into something I'm unfamiliar with or don't know, like I'll say a bowling alley. I'm intimidated walking into a bowling alley because I don't know what to do. Like, what shoes do I need? What kind of ball do I need? I don't know any of that stuff, and I'm intimidated. Was it intimidating for you to show up to that Monday night no drop ride the first time?
I think especially obviously as it pertains to being an outsider, I guess, or minority, certainly. I've just become so accustomed to the feeling of the butterflies that come with being uncomfortable that I honestly don't necessarily even remember. It doesn't stand out as a memory, unlike anything else. Starting high school in a predominantly white school, or
so showing up to your first pure white group ride was no more traumatic than going out for the Dubuque whatever team.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, it just I've always been in. I've always been an outlier in many of my interests. Certainly, it just sort of is. I've come to accept, with all of the things.
How are you treated? How are you received?
I think I don't have anything. There's always one-off experiences. I think the most difficult thing, of course, certainly in being an outsider of any kind, right? Not necessarily, the black minority, but maybe a Spanish-speaking or whatever it may be. I think the most difficult thing, of course, is to not allow certain experiences to cloud judgment over the group, right? There is, maybe a tinge of at times of what some may perceive as soft bigotry, right? As an example, I was recently in Wisconsin, as you know, riding Horrible Hilly.
Oh, right.
And on one of the Alps, halfway through, some guy's screaming at me. And I think his exact words were something like, are you Corey Williams or something? And of course that's, either a really bad joke or it's the equivalent of, when I used to golf, some jackass yelling that I'm Tiger Woods or something, right? So
just because you're black, you're Tiger Woods.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's two sides to that coin. Of course, you could take every, maybe unfunny joke as the most heinous thing you've ever heard. Or you can just take it for face value that, regardless of the intention, whatever.
There are worse people to be
exactly
compared to or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Corey does quite well for himself.
For sure.
And I, as a lowly Cat 4, I definitely will just, I'll take the compliment in stride, I guess.
He did have a good sprint in was that the Cat 4? Because 4, you did Cat 4-5 and then you did Cat 4?
Yes.
You went off the front in a Cat 4-5 for a bit.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was fun. I'm still learning the tactics of cycling.
Well, call Corey and say, hey, dude, what do I do different? That'd be kind of fun. They should come here and do it.
I would love to learn. I think especially as an outsider, I think especially you mentioned like intimidation. I think the most intimidating part, especially about cycling as a minority getting into it. I think cycling can have a tinge of like pretentiousness, I suppose. We ride expensive vehicles and have expensive clothing, and and we're all people at the end of the day, right? So like you kind of have to form relationships with maybe people you would naturally otherwise have relationships with. It just can be a bit difficult as a straight up newbie. I don't know how to draft. I don't know how to do anything. That's probably the most intimidating, is like the patience of the folks that you ride with, and whether or not they will be, I think, gracious enough to truly teach you.
Yeah,
that's the thing that I've struggled with.
You hit the nail on the head when you said pretentious, because walking into the Meteor, and everyone there's got their skinny leg jeans, and they rode their fixie into town, and then they're meeting for a group ride, and it's like, do I belong here? Like and I'm an old dude, and I do still shave my legs, but the only reason I take out my license is so I can shave my legs, but still, it's like, I don't know if I belong with this crowd in Austin, Texas, showing up for the group ride. Is this a bunch of freaking pros, Cat 1s, and I'm going to get dropped leaving the parking lot? Am I getting laughed at?
Yeah.
And I've been racing a long time, and I 100% get that pretentiousness. But once you break through that, people see that we're all just human, and, that dude has scars and I have scars, and that dude has shining points and I have shining points, and we have something in common, we have stuff we don't have in common, and somewhere we find the ground. But I like how you said, are people on the group ride going to be gracious enough to help me understand how this pace line works, help me understand what wheel to jump on, help me understand to freaking bend my elbows.
On the wheel, how to properly pull, there's so many nuances in this sport. And that paired with, I think, to the credit of, the folks that are trying to teach, it is a bit of high stakes, right? Like, people can get hurt, right? I was involved, unfortunately, in a crash this weekend, and like you certainly understand the level of danger that is inherent, especially in obviously road cycling, when you're taking corners at 25, 30 miles an hour, and there is a lot of nuance for a beginner to learn. So it just can be a lot. And then culturally, I'm new to the sport, but I've already kind of started to sense that road cycling culture is a bit different from gravel, is a bit different from cross, is a bit different from fixed. So like, I've only ever ridden a road bike. I only know that world of road cycling. So like, I guess I suppose I have to kind of make my way around to different disciplines.
As you wish, everybody has their favorites. I love the road, and I love mountain biking. I like gravel, I like cross,
right?
But I love road and I love gravel.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Like, have you ever not felt safe?
Like on my bike, just in general.
On your bike, or I don't know. I mean, help me understand living in Des Moines as a black dude.
Oh yeah. On a bike, no, I've not felt a sense of like, heightened, heightened level of being unsafe, I guess, relative to my peers. I think just cycling in general is inherently a little sketch at times. I'm thankful to be in Des Moines because it is more culturally, I think, cycle friendly versus like I think Dubuque is not. It's not a lot of trails, and when people see you on the road, they're not super gracious. they want you to ride on the sidewalk. Outside of that, I think just like my experience in Des Moines has certainly been like a bit different, a little different than my experience in Dubuque. Initially, Dubuque is a different place, I think, culturally speaking. I think largely like the kind of socioeconomics of the demographic in Dubuque is a bit different. And what I mean by that, I guess, is like there is a already relatively tiny black population in Dubuque. And then, furthermore, that population of black people in that city are overwhelmingly on the lower middle class end of the kind of socioeconomic range, I guess.
Working class. There's a lot of
yeah,
like the Hormel plant.
Yeah, but even I think lower, like I feel like the town Dubuque is super segregated in my estimation. Black population almost exclusively lives in like one portion of the town. And so my experience, which I know is different now, I haven't been in Dubuque in a decade, is that it at times felt a bit, us, them, right? When you have such a drastic divide, that's like pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Like it just can be that paired with like actual experiences in high school, like again of just ignorant people. It probably clouded my judgment of Dubuque a bit, I think, versus when I moved to Des Moines, it felt very much like a little bit of a fresh start. Obviously, I was coming here under different pretenses as a young adult with a career. But also, I think I don't believe, and again, as I say this, I'm probably thinking about factually, it may not be true, but Des Moines doesn't feel as segregated as Dubuque. I don't know. Feels like I've met affluent black people who live in West Des Moines, or who live on the South Side. But there's obviously the South Side is not like there's very affluent pockets.
For sure. For sure.
So it's just a different. It's different.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. I wonder. We had a race weekend last weekend, and on Sunday, 2 other black dudes showed up.
Oh yeah.
One from Omaha or Lincoln, one from
Texas.
Texas.
Nope. I got contacts. Dallas, Texas.
You did. Oh, wow.
Dallas, Texas, and Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's it like to you when you see a couple black guys show up and they're pinning numbers on?
Yeah. It's probably only awkward for my white peers that I'm this excited to see somebody else that looks like me. But again, I just as I've always joked with many of my friends, my wife included, the world just looks so much different when you're a minority, obviously, right? Like it's not often that my wife is a minority in a situation, maybe when we go to family events or something, and it's noticeable. It's a different feeling. So going to races in town or just seeing representation, I think is always to me a welcome sight. But not necessarily because it's not like we rode together, right?
Right.
Those other gentlemen are way older than me. But
watch it.
Yeah.
Watch it. One of them was in my race, and he had quads like this, man. He was a sprinter for sure.
But I just
dude, I hung on his wheel for all I had.
It's just it's purely for me the like representation, right? Going back to kind of the article you cited off the top, like my dad and now myself as as a father of a 4-year-old and an uncle to 3 and a godfather to 1, like my dad very much stressed these sort of nonsensical tropes and wanted to really break the cycle when it comes to many aspects of what many may perceive Black life to be. I mean, I grew up camping at Jellystone.
Oh, no way.
Yogi Bear Park.
Yeah, I remember that place.
I grew up doing everything. I think my dad like intentionally sought to put me in positions that quote unquote, Black people didn't do. And even when I heard that, it kind of made me want to do it more,
Have you had tofu?
I was vegan for actually like the last month or so, my wife and I.
That article is out of date.
It is. I will say my digestive system can only tolerate, about 1 vegan meal or 1 tofu meal because I cannot. I get awful gas. So might be some truth to.
I'm pretty okay not having tofu.
It's not. It's no good.
It should say all people do not eat tofu, but whatever. No knock. Yeah. I just do not like it.
But yeah, I vehemently reject, this notion that we don't do certain things.
I think she does too. That was the whole point of her article.
Right.
It was like, we're here.
Yeah.
So do you think the cycling community would benefit with more diversity? And I say that we've got a pretty, like the Latino cycling group is monster and passionate. My favorite thing all weekend was going up that killer climb at the end of the hill, and all these dudes, Luis and Alejandro, Jose, were all, and their families were all at the top of that hill screaming their lungs out.
Right.
Putting their hands out. I was high-fiving them, even though I couldn't see anything. It was awesome. So those dudes are doing a great job. It's awesome, bringing diversity into our cycling community. But there's not a lot of Black dudes. Do you think it would benefit to be more diverse in our community?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I was excited to see, 2 Black visitors come up for the midweek crit. I do feel that same sort of sensation by like Team Presto and other, because again, it just anything that deviates outside of the norm, right? No offense, but like, it's pretty normal just to see, I guess, white people in Subarus ride nice bicycles. I don't think that really is all that earth shattering, but Presto, for instance, I don't know. It's good for the sport, I think, and I like to, and it's no knock at my white peers. I mean, I love everybody out there. They're all, I've had really good interactions with literally everybody. Everybody's been like super welcoming. But yeah, it's also super nice to ride with many people in Presto, there are a couple other like Latino teams. So yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, I do. Obviously, I wish there were more Black cyclists for sure. But it's how do we encourage? There is an economic component to this sport that is unlike probably. Well, that's unlike other tangential sports.
It's a lot cheaper to be a runner.
You need like
for sure
$50
right
to be a good runner.
Right, you can go to Kohl's and buy a decent pair of Asics and go run. Yeah, for sure.
So like, I don't know how you bridge the gap of like some young kid on the north side or something of Des Moines.
That's kind of interesting, and one of the reasons I ask is my daughter taught at North Side, 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, Harding Middle School. And I think it's the same school Lolo Jones went to, junior high.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She came back and gave a whole bunch of shoes back to him a bunch of years ago, but which was pretty cool. So I think she came back to her old junior high. But anyway, that's beside the point. I went in and did a career day thing because she needed a volunteer, and I said yes. And I pulled, Justin Williams had done the Legion team had done a kind of a where we came from thing, Justin and Corey Williams. And I showed it to him, and I'm like, there's a high school group here in Des Moines, and there's a bicycle collective that takes donated bikes, and they'll get you on a bike, and the high school team will get you in a kit and teach you how to ride.
Right.
So they're trying to break that socioeconomic mold, right?
Right.
You don't have to have a $10,000 bike and a $250 pair of shoes and $250 helmet. Like, we'll outfit you and teach you how to do it, which is super cool. But if you went in that classroom, you had a group of 8th graders for an hour and talk about cycling, what would you say to them? Get a pair of track shoes, or?
I mean, I definitely would stress initially, like, just how amazing, like, the community has been, or how just, like, camaraderie in sport in general is extremely impactful in the lives of everybody who belongs to it, right? Like, as members of this community, it, like, these people become a part of sort of your, like, extended family. You can't go somewhere without seeing them. They become like an extension of your network. And much like some of the career stuff that I've done, because I also am a black technologist. I work for, a very large technology company, and there's not, that many of us in that realm as well. So I try to stress the importance of community, network, and you certainly get that with cycling, right? There's a lot of good folks, both personally and professionally. So I would tell them that not everything's a business transaction, but, like, there's good people in the cycling community that they may benefit from knowing. And it's a good workout, and health is wealth. And
it's a true statement.
One day you'll be thankful that you bike. It's certainly something you can take with you forever, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like some other sports where maybe you can only do it for
football. You got to have. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure you need to play football, right?
And then you're pretty much done after a certain age. You can't.
There's no senior football leagues for
at all. Yeah.
Retired folks. Pickleball, maybe. Football, no.
Yeah. I mean, like, just. I just would, and then, of course, me myself, for selfish reasons, I would say there's a lot of opportunity in this sport that, like, we don't know how many athletes we could have, on the global stage, in the think big way, but, like, that are, kids on the south side of Chicago or on the north side of Des Moines. We have no idea because they aren't in the sport.
Right.
So, like,
the next Nelson Bales could be going to North High.
I mean, yeah, and you literally don't know if you don't get on a bike and start to learn from somebody how far you can go. I think that's I don't have any evidence, but I certainly feel like the community out west, in general, across the country, it feels like the black community in cycling is growing and has grown more than I ever knew it to be. And again, maybe I live in a bubble now because I follow so many black cyclists, but there's enough black cyclists to follow. So even that's like...
That is a fair statement. Yeah, that's cool. That's actually super cool. One of the things I wonder is, I'm as white as you get. I went to Johnston High School. I mean, there was one black dude. His mom was white and his dad was black. So, but that's the only kid in my high school.
Right.
And how can guys like me be more welcoming? What can we do to expand diversity in the cycling community? Because there's a ton of guys just like me all over the country. Austin, Texas, Boulder, Colorado, Madison, Wisconsin, name it, and it's a bunch of 50-year-old white dudes who raced in college and still shave their legs, right?
I don't know, because I don't, like I said, myself, just thinking about my own journey, I was kind of like, as you kind of have to be a little bit in a position of a little bit of privilege that I could afford a bike and even get started, not saying many of us don't have the means to jump in, but especially younger folks, younger than when I started at 24 with a career. I really don't know. I think it starts more like, the high school level. I think I try to model, right? Like, again, representation matters. Maybe to white America, Corey Williams or Justin Williams or other black cyclists are just like cyclists, but like to me, they're sort of like, I emulate their, swagger on the bike. I enjoy that sort of flair. It keeps me there. I like following them, and they've got me into the sport. I watch the Tour de France now because of Justin and Corey. So I don't know. I think probably I would say, as my technology professor used to say about technology, right? Rule number 1 is don't be a dick. So I think the nice thing, the thing that anybody could do is just sort of be themselves, be welcoming. Again, I think for Des Moines, everybody's always been like super nice and welcoming. I've met a lot of people, even though, like you mentioned previously, I can't remember half their names. I try to remember their bikes.
We know what bike they're riding.
Yeah. It's obviously easier for them than it is for me to remember all these names. But that, and I think, like, humility. Like, you weren't, obviously, I think, to your credit, like, sort of unafraid of, like, these sort of very obvious conversations. I think oftentimes these conversations can be like a bit combative, I think, from like maybe the point of view of like a cyclist who may be, I guess, triggered by hearing that there's not that many black cyclists, or
you look like Corey Williams.
Yeah, or things like that, or I think those things, just being open-minded and like I mentioned, having learned slowly but surely from folks, being like open and willing to share information, because I also am learning the more competitive I get. There are a lot of like sort of unwritten things about cycling that I don't know that you can experience by yourself. So I think being open with the knowledge that you do have is imperative, again, because like I'm literally super new. I just learned what type of crankset I have. Like I didn't even know what that, I just bike. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the different type of climbing config versus a sprinting config, and it appears that I am not properly equipped for sprints, so I am going to address that question.
I'm sure that there's some gears on there that you'd be able to turn over the gears, and
I hope so. I'm riding a 50 right now, 5039 in the front.
Well, what's in the back?
Or 5032 in the front. I'm riding a 11 speed. What is in the back? I don't know.
You probably got an 11 on there, and that 5011 is probably, I don't know if it's the exact same. I think 5010 is the same as a 5312.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I was given that lesson. I grew up on a 53 42 front and then a 1117 on the back. Dude, did you see the quads? Come on, give me credit.
I do need to find some better sprint. I'm losing sprint, so that shouldn't be losing.
I'm
running out of gears.
It's both a skill. It's a skill, and I mean, there's like muscles involved as well. Like you got to be strong to power around stuff. But anyway, you just keep working on it.
I'll keep going.
So I want to ask before we wrap up. You got a kid. How old is he? 3, 4?
4.
4 years old. Do you hope? Do you hope he rides?
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old son, biracial. Obviously, my wife is white, but
that wasn't obvious. I can't see her here.
I'm sorry. Yes,
but yeah, if we look on your Instagram, I think we would see that. Yep.
As well as 2 black nephews, as well as my wife. Obviously, I have another nephew, and I hope they all ride personally.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely really hope that my nephews all ride and or run because, I think it's in our genetics. I think we're quite decent endurance athletes, which, again, kind of going back to, my high school coach. I would have never discovered that I had an endurance engine whatsoever if not for a lunatic AP English, I think he taught, coach stalking me for like months outside of my locker. This crazy guy, he kind of was like Bill Nye the Science Guy, and he just kept telling me how good I would be, and I just kept saying, man, 3 miles sounds like there's no shot that I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
So I hope to be that light for my nephews and my son. I hope my son actually does triathlon, is what I'm hoping.
Really?
His mom is a good runner. His dad is an okay runner. But I think he's got an engine. So I hope he can find swimming earlier than I did as a kid when I was outside of Chicago.
Well, I will say you're out in Waukee, and the Waukee Y has a great swim team for kids. Like you can start them, this summer, this fall. We'll talk offline, but get them swimming. Our kids all swam, and it was awesome. Yeah. Loved swimming, loved running. Our youngest ran, and then they all go on RAGBRAI, and we have a good time. So they ride, not competitively, but that's quite all right. That's cool. I hope they do. I wonder, as was asking this, like, and based on what you're saying, like, if we go to Harding Junior High, to that 8th grade class and say, look, we got a bike. Here's the gear you need. Here's the opportunity to try, and give them the opportunity, the equipment, and the, I don't want to just say training, but the knowledge, just being there for them, to help them learn how to ride a bike, learn how to turn, learn how to do all that stuff, and then eventually in a group and all that. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we can do as old white dudes, is get people bikes and get them on it, right? I mean,
and the representation part, right? Like,
and the representation part.
I think the hardest part is oftentimes what isn't super obvious, I think, to maybe, I'll say communities.
Me?
Yeah. I'll politely say communities who are well represented everywhere is
dude, you are a diplomat.
The importance of representation is not really like, it's not something that you sort of have had to process, right? Because subconsciously, subconsciously, there's really no sort of maybe subconscious sort of roadblocks that you've had to try to process, right? Like, there's been white presidents and white guys on the moon and white guys in submarines.
Right. And we haven't had to seek representation for people that look like us, for role models that look like us, for sure. And so what you're saying is it's better for you to go in and say, look, we got some bikes, we got some kits, we're going to teach you how to do it. than me going into that classroom. Me going to that classroom, it's like, whatever, dude.
I think both, right?
Both, yeah.
It's like ultimately, I can't be everywhere, right? There's only so many of us. And then, but like, there's also, from the other vantage point, from like young black potential cyclists, there is a little bit of like social intimidation, right? Like ultimately, there are a lot of youth or folks that would otherwise be intimidated, otherwise be interested in cycling, that may be intimidated by not being able to sort of socialize with like a predominantly white audience. So like that's sort of something that neither you nor I, right, can really do much about.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But that plays a part into it. That's just factually speaking,
Yeah. Well, I think we can be intentionally welcoming and understand that for new kids to find this sport, A, they have to know about it.
Exactly.
Know it exists, and B, like, remove some of the barriers that exist for kind of everybody, which, like you said, it's an expensive sport.
I think we can put on more events. I like what Chris is doing. I think that will attract more people to cycling than anything, because kind of you build it and they will come. I think if there was a crit or something on the north side of Des Moines, or something where they could see the sport, B, different people doing the sport, different shapes, sizes, creeds, etc., that in itself, I think, would go a long way. Because again, my own story, I just learned what a crit race was a year ago, 2 years ago, or these different disciplines of bike racing or riding. Mm-hmm. So like, and it's because I would never be in the same space,
right,
as a Alfondo or something,
right.
Like, so I think, how can we try to meet those folks where they maybe are? I don't know what that looks like, but
I think you just invented the Highland Park criterion.
Yeah, I think, and hey, if we encourage, maybe minority business owners to support the ride in some way, whether it be food trucks or what have you, that would obviously encourage a certain demographic to then spectate, and then boom, now we have more people who can see the sport at a younger age and start to ask questions, just like I did. Like, what are these people doing?
right. You can do that?
Yeah, what are you guys doing? Yeah. I mean, I didn't know. I didn't ride in a group for the longest because I thought you had to have some sort of like license or something. I mean, there's no real flyers that are like come one, come all. I mean,
I will never ask for your license to haul me back to the group. Like, I will never do that. I promise. All right, man. We've been rocking an hour. I 100% appreciate you coming in, having this discussion, being open. Thanks for being on Bike Talk with Dave, and I look forward to seeing you on the road.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in today, and thanks tons to Jay for taking the time to chat with me about helping create a more inclusive and welcoming sport. I'd also like to thank him yet again for lending me his wheel and his consistent smile. Such a great dude, and I'm glad I've gotten to know him better. Now, I'd like to thank you also for tuning in today, and if you enjoyed today's show, I would love it if you would rate and review on your favorite podcast platform, and give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook. When you do, it really helps the show's audience grow. Now, if you really love the show and you want to see it continue to grow, feel free to support it financially, and just look for Bike Talk with Dave at buymeacoffee.com. When you do, I'd love to send you a Bike Talk with Dave sticker. I'd also like to thank BikeIowa.com for supporting the show. BikeIowa.com has one of the most extensive lists of cycling events anywhere. From mountain bike races to party rides, Bike Iowa has it all, including the Core 4. Now it's coming up quick. It's just a week and a half from when this episode drops. But on August 19th, I am planning on being there to tackle the gravel, the single track, and the pavement. And I would love to see you there as well. And if you did happen to miss this year, be sure to look for my post-race episode later in August. And then be sure and get signed up in 2024. Check it out. Are you looking for your next epic cycling adventure? We've got one for you this summer that challenges all the surface types. When the folks at Core 4 say no surface untouched, they mean it. Champagne gravel, pavement, speedy single track, and all the level B roads. Core 4 doesn't stop at 4 surface types. They've got an ethos to get all bodies on bikes, and it comes through initiatives which support socioeconomic justice, gender equality, and bike advocacy. It's all about community, opportunity, recreation, and engagement at Core 4. Go early, bring the fam. They've got everything. Bikes, bevs, packet pickup party at Big Grove, live music, free camping, and finish line fun for all. Do not miss the No Surface Untouched action in Iowa City on Saturday, August 19th. 100, 50, and 25-mile options. Follow along on Instagram at Core4Bike and get in the lineup. Core 4 is gonna be a blast. And just a week later, I am stoked to head to Lincoln, Nebraska, where Dee and I will be sailing our tandem through the gravel seas in the 75-mile version of the Gravel Worlds. Remember, you can find Core 4, Gravel Worlds, and so many more events at bikeiowa.com. Also remember that you can find Bike Talk with Dave on Instagram, Facebook, and you can now stream every episode on biketalk.bike. And you can now listen on YouTube. I hope you have a great week, and remember that nothing compares to the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle.